What?
Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Gunner Shot में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we're going to talk about a very complex issue which has come up. I never expected it, but it has. We're talking about the interplay between the unresolved LAC, the Chinese FDI which is on the cards, the defense budget which is static or stagnating or rather reducing. And then what does all this produce? I think it's strategic confusion. Or even worse. So let's unravel this bit by bit, layer by layer, to see what the whole story is about. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking of, allowing the Chinese to come in? I mean, it is something beyond me, right? Okay, first, where did it start? It started with this. When, in the economic survey, our Indian economics advisor, right, he comes out and says, there's requirement of more Chinese direct investment in his annual report. Why? His logic is that if the Chinese invest here and anything is produced here, then you're not dependent on the Chinese. I mean, that's some logic. I have not understood it. Right? And then you can export it from here to somewhere else. That means you want to become like Mexico or Indonesia or all those, where Chinese go and set up factories elsewhere, and then from there it's exported to the West. So that's his logic. There's some logic, and I find in Twitter and in social media, a lot of people say, "Oh, great move. We're normalizing relations with China." Maybe. But let me analyze this very dispassionately. Okay? And I'll present the facts to you. I'll give my opinion. It's up to all of you, agree or not agree. Right? We all know that we have an unresolved LAC. And we paid in cold blood there. We lost 20 lives at Galwan. 50,000 of our troops have been there for the past 4 years. The Chinese have not moved back. We went around the whole world saying we banned their apps, we banned their investment, we banned everything from China. Right? After doing all that, and why? Our stance has been, look, unless the border is resolved, nothing else happens. The Chinese have always been saying, well, let the border be, we'll do the trade, let's normalize our relations, then we'll go ahead. That's been the Chinese way, and we've said no. The relations can only be normal if the LAC is resolved, at least status quo ante. Now, out of the blue, this starts. Prima facie, it appears that we are playing into the Chinese hands. All the while, the Chinese have been saying, forget about the LAC, now let's normalize the relations. That has a place. Now, all of a sudden, we are also talking of that. Why? And what are the implications? And what is the story coming up? Okay, let me put it one by one. The whole story started with the interview of the Prime Minister in Newsweek in April, before the elections. And where he said that, he emphasized on the relationship between India and China. And for both the countries, it is important and significant. He felt that this issue had to be urgently addressed because prolonged imbalance or bad situation, adverse situation on the border is bad for both countries, and bilateral relations and things like that. And importantly, he said stable and peaceful relations between India and China are important for not just to of our countries, but the entire region and the world. I agree with him, right? And he says, I hope and believe through positive and constructive bilateral engagement at the diplomatic and military levels, we will be able to resolve and peace and restore peace and sustain peace and tranquility on our borders. But the operating word is stable and peaceful relationship between India and China are important for just not two of us, but the world. And then a little later, our defense minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, उन्होंने भी बता दिया कि border talks were progressing satisfactorily, and there's no fresh tension and all that. But then elections came, and the rest of the things just went off. Oh, after that, no talk. Obviously, there's been pressure from the industry. They want to make a quick buck. Okay, and this comes up. An economist. The epic bust up between China and India could be ending. What does the economist say? He says, relations are still far from their pre 2020 normality, unlikely to return to it soon. He says, even so, there has been a quite yet notable shift in recent months towards a new phase of relations defined by border stability and closer commercial ties. He's talking of 2-3 months, and it starts with the Prime Minister's statement in April in Economist. The next part is important. The shift reflects India's urgent need for Chinese technology, investment, and expertise to meet immediate industrial needs. It's also based on China's mounting concern about its own economy and escalating trade barriers worldwide. So he's put both. You need investment, you need technology. He's talking of Chinese. But my question is, why only Chinese? Why can't we go elsewhere? You want investment? Get it from Russia, get it from USA, get it from West, get it from anywhere. Technology is available there also. Why only Chinese? And the second part is important here. Based on China's mounting concern and about its own economy. That means this whole story is actually giving China a lifeline, an economic lifeline. Okay. The nitty-gritties will come, but the motor thing to understand. Oh, look, we have a need. I'll come to it a little later. If this is the issue that you need Chinese technology, investment, and expertise, that means it reflects the failure of our Atmanirbharta or our inability to put Atmanirbharta on the road. What are we talking of? And why did we elect this government? Right? Okay. This is the trade deficit. Everyone keeps asking me, so trade deficit बढ़ रहा है, बढ़ रहा है, बढ़ रहा है. It has been going up, and I've been explaining to everyone, yeah, India is doing the right thing. We will, when it helps, we get Chinese inputs. You process it, and then you upvalue it and sell it to others and export it. खास करके, drugs, pharma industry. But this is something else which is happening, and it's not clear what this whole story about. You can put your finger to say yes, it's about heavy engineering, maybe, but more about EVs and things like that, batteries. What's so special, right? Okay, let's take it further. So this comes from South China Morning Post. It's very clear. He says India's finance minister in favor of more Chinese direct investment despite strained ties. So the economic advisor's view has been seconded by the finance minister. Why? Who's the one who's done all this? We don't know. There is some move. I mean, and that move can't be more blatant than this, right? And this is at a time, our defense budget is going down. This is the graph of the defense budget, right from 2015 to now. You see the end 2014-15, 24-25. It's at the, it's less than 2% of our GDP, the defense budget, right? I'll talk of this later. You don't allocate. That means what? You're trying to give an economic angle, buying peace through his investment. If you buy peace through his investment, then you don't spend on the forge. Is that the message which is going out? At least to me, it's come out that way. In any case, this is a poor trend line. I had spoken about it earlier when I presented the defense budget to all of you. Now, Global Times has gone to town. See the cartoon. अपना छोटा मैग्नेट है, उसका बड़ा मैग्नेट है. He says, the whole story he says is, unless India gets Chinese capital, we can't grow. It's a litmus test for our growth. And in the tweet he says, India seems to be changing its stance to attract more Chinese investment. But the success of this policy adjustment hinges on whether India still sees China as a strategic rival in geopolitics and security, which hinders trust between the two countries. He's not a fool. He's going to bargain with you on this issue. He'll not invest here till such time you accept the border, forget about the border. I mean, the implications are clear. We should understand this. Okay? And then the next article, it came up yesterday or day before. South China Morning Post. India debates increase China's investment. Can benefits outweigh geopolitical risks? Will India take that plunge? They are hoping that we take the plunge. This is playing right into the Chinese hands. Okay? This also comes in our own thing. Government weighing options to open the Chinese FDI tap. तो इस टैप को खोल लो, नहा लो इसमें और चाइना का पानी ले लेना सर पे. गंगा का पानी छोड़ दो. यूनान से लेके आया जो पानी है ना, वो यांगजी का या येलो रिवर का पानी ले लेना. But I see some hope. I mean, let me put it this way. Hope is our external affairs minister. He is very clearly given a message that the state of border. When? This is at Laos 2 days back, the East Asia Summit. That he's still giving primacy to the border. Okay? And then this comes out in Reuters. India and China agree to approach border issues with urgency. So are we going to have a deal on the LAC? Then we can think of investment. Or it's only investment and border will be spoken of. That's the point. So what does our external affairs minister say? His tweet, right? Continued our discussion about our bilateral relationship. The state of border will necessarily be reflected on the state of our ties. I hope this is true. Okay? Agreed on the need to give strong guidance to complete the disengagement process. Must ensure full respect for the LOC and past agreement. It is in our mutual interest to stabilize our ties. We should approach the immediate issues with a sense of purpose and urgency. That's why the report from Reuters. Will this be done? Or will it be sidelined? $1 million question. At this point of time, I don't know. And then today he's given, in the final phase of the East Asian Summit, where he's met with China and ASEAN and all that in Laos, Vientiane. He says lines of communication through South China Sea critical for peace. So he's taken the battle that side. So you look, the elucidation is on the right. Slocks passing through the South China Sea are critical for peace, stability, prosperity, and development of the Indo-Pacific region. Code of conduct should be substantive and effective, consistent with international law, and should not prejudice legitimate rights and interests of nations, not party to discussions. So he's put it across to the Chinese there. He's also put it across about terrorism, which later I didn't capture that. That everyone should, fight terrorism on an equal footing, and you can't distinguish between good terrorism and bad terrorism, something like that. So he's put it across. So you're seeing two emerging voices. Is it a plan that both of them are coordinated, or the economic or the finance ministry is talking something, and the external affairs ministry is talking something else? One doesn't know. Is it confusion? But there is some truth in this whole story. This comes out. He says India to speed up visa processes for Chinese technicians to aim production backlog. So sometime back we were not giving visas. Suddenly we have said we'll give them visas. There's some logic in giving them visas because they have to come and set up factories here for Apple, all that, and those technicians are needed. They have to come and train our technicians, and these steps are all that. That plan, okay, you've done that. What about this? Xiaomi makes a comeback. Xiaomi and Vivo, both you got after them. You raided them. You all that. And now, Xiaomi and Vivo are competing for top spot in, smartphone sales. Others are saying, no, we don't want your stuff. EVs nahi chahiye hame, aapko batteries nahi chahiye. Tariffs are going up. We are not doing anything. We are facilitating all these fellows. So there's some logic in what that whole thing about investment is. You have already eased out on this, despite the fact that these chaps have been cooking their books and siphoning money out of India. Then let's be this thing. I want to go back. I did this on military lessons for India. I did a podcast with General Rakesh Sharma. See the first 4 bullets. What did we speak then? We said war is not inevitable, but you must expect it to happen. I mean, let me highlight the whole thing a little bigger. Okay. So what we have said is war is not inevitable. However, you cannot rule it out. So even if you do some kind of economic samjhota with China, you can't rule out war. Excessive reliance on global support is a fallacy. No one's going to come and help you. We saw that. And if you, I'll come to it, if you get in, economic equation with China, and what about your relationship with Russia and US? Russia will be happy. What about US? And then, of course, the third point is the crux. Reliance on economic interdependence with adversaries to decrease the chance of war is a major fallacy. No one is going to accept it. If we had tremendous economic interdependency with China in 2020, and they came and did what they had to do in Galwan and Pangong Tso and all that. And peace based on agreements is fragile and illusory. We had so many agreements with China. Did they respect even one? Right? Now, these 4 points are important. And the third point, economic interdependence. And at that time, this is what we spoke. I'll play that clip to you. And you hear what General Rakesh Sharma had to say. Not my view alone. Economic interdependence does not guarantee peace. Right? That's
Yeah.
what you said. Reliance on economic interdependence with adversaries to decrease the chance of war is a major fallacy. I'll tee off before you say anything. The First World War, the economic interdependence between all the countries which were involved in the war was a very high order, but yet it happened. And it has repeated itself over and over and again. And it has repeated itself with us in with China also. So I think you need to elaborate why this thing happens and why economic interdependence is not a guarantor of peace.
So you gave a right example of First World War when Germany and UK and all the countries had excellent amount of economic interdependence, and still they went to war. And war went started with a not a very major issue. Now you see between Taiwan and China, between China and Japan, the trade superlative, excellent trade relationship between these countries. Still, the Chinese keep firing across here, across the Taiwan thing, because the matching of geopolitics and geoeconomics, though larger geopolitics is a umbrella term, and geoeconomics will come into this one, but geoeconomics cannot assure you that to outweigh geopolitics. Geopolitical. China, does it want territory from us? Does it want to take on Arunachal Pradesh? In this century, China cannot take on Arunachal Pradesh. This is a very tough war, and Chinese understand it. So all these renaming 62, all the places are fine as a geopolitical pressure. But it is not that the Chinese don't understand. They're a pragmatic nation. They will understand that a war, there is no guarantee of who will win, and wars are so messy that you can't guarantee how the wars will take their course. Ukraine is fighting Russia, superpower. Americans fought Taliban, Afghanistan, to remove Taliban, and left when Taliban came back into force. Americans fought Vietnam, and they won every battle but lost the war. The fact I'm saying is that economic interdependence, and why I bring this issue is that we have a 130 $140 billion trade with China. It can be said that because the trade is there and it is largely beneficial to China, there will be no war. I think we will be pushing ourselves into a cul-de-sac in case we start thinking that there is an economic interdependence. Two countries having McDonald's don't fight wars. No logic to it. It's a statement of fact people have spoken. Well, countries have fought war. India had McDonald's, so had Pakistan McDonald's. So we fought a war. No two democracies fight a war. Democracies have fought war. Argentina and UK. The fact is, all these things, that there is a economic interdependence which will protect us from a war with China, will cause us grievous damage, because despite the economic interdependence, the Chinese came and did what they did in May 2020. I mean, we could have done. And now in this globalized world, you just cannot get out of the supply chains. You can buy anything from anywhere. Its manufacturing could still be taking place in China. You can buy from Indonesia. It could still have China, or the Bangladesh. It could still have a conduit across supply chains which come from China. So economic interdependence is important, and it can assist, but it is not the end all. It will not
Yeah.
overtake geopolitics.
Yeah, that means economic interdependence gives you a leeway in a post-war scenario to come to some accommodation, but it doesn't stop the war from happening, nor does it mitigate the risk of war from happening. On that, there's no doubt. Right, this is what we had discussed then. This was about a month back. So very clearly, if we are economically interdependent with China, it will not stop war. But will you be able to handle the situation which we are creating for ourselves? As it is, we are in an adverse situation economically. Chinese FDI coming in will only place us at a greater risk. Okay, what next? What are the implications? The implications are very clear. Take your mind back to the period before 2020, when Chinese FDI was floating around India as if it's a swimming pool. The influence and interference in our system was huge. So, if you are getting FDI into our country, won't their influence increase? Slowly and steadily, this FDI will increase across and make us dependent on them. We've seen it happen. So, one day, Mr. Xi Jinping will be called back to Mahabalipuram. And then our greed for money and political corruption will spike to compromise our security. There are enough people within India who want to go, lay down, do Shashtang Namaskar in front of China. Our politicians will be the first chaps, or second rate, third rate. I'm not talking about the top PM, CM, but there are enough guys at state level and second, third rung level who will fall prey to money. Some of these politicians, उनको एक bottle liquor दे दो तो आपको आपके पास आ जाएंगे. चाइना वाला तो फेंक देगा. There's practicalities, and there's a major implication that Chinaman will never go back from Demchok and Depsang. The LAC will have to be accepted in the current condition. Are you prepared for it? Are you prepared for the status quo as it is today? If you do that, you are admitting defeat. That after 4 years, you have not been able to push them out. You have no leverage to push them out. You accepted it now. कि हाथ खड़ा कर लिया. And you lose strategic autonomy, that means. I mean, there are major implications of this whole story. What about international respect? People will say, यार ये क्या है? आपने ये तो आप you said कि हम ये करते हैं, वो करेंगे चाइना के साथ. You will become part of the Sinocentric world order. Look, you need to find the right convergence between national economic strategy and national defense strategy. For that, you need a national security strategy. Do we have one? That's the question. Industry and trade cannot converge with military facing each other. ये नहीं कि हम इंडस्ट्री और ट्रेड करते रहेंगे, आप लड़ते रहो. ये देश है एक का यार, अलग अलग थोड़ी ना है ये इंडस्ट्री वाले. You think we'll be able to leverage Chinese investments and technology so that we cement our place as part of China plus one? अभी तक तो नहीं कर पाए पिछले 4 साल से. अब हम कौन से उकाड़ेंगे? अगर कोशिश करते रहो, अपने आप खड़े हो जाओगे एक दिन. इससे पहले कि आप बिफोर यू एक हर चीज का एक वक्त होता है. वक्त से पहले कुछ नहीं होगा. Why we jumping up and down? Just last week and last 10-15 days, we've been speaking. We have to walk a tightrope between USA and Russia. Both are concerned about their technology and technology security. That is why many thing is, you think the Chinese chap will give us technology? वो तो पैसा एंट लेगा और टेक्नोलॉजी मिलेगा नहीं आपको. Is it indicative of government inability? All these questions come up. We have to understand why are lobbies there in which are canvassing for all this. It appears so. This is the reaction I got from a very good officer. How does one do normal business with 50,000 troops on LAC for the last 4 years and counting? This is the question is asked. FDI, Chinese factories in India joining Chinese supply chains. So India का क्या हो? You're only मतलब you're like Pakistan then. वो औकात तो वही हो जाएगा. No businesses are done as charities. They will make money out of our country and make us spend to maintain our troops at LAC, and they'll use the money which they, made from us to fight against us. And we all know how well Chinese do business. Whatever he says, can you accept it? वो बात हुआ ना. Peace based on agreement will not work. You are agreeing against people who have stabbed you behind your back repeatedly from 62 onwards, and they have never honored, the Chinese have never honored even one agreement. Today you want FDI from them. I mean, this is something which we have to really rethink. I've been tracking this. I said, look, let me put it across to all of you as to, with facts and figures. I believe in fact. Is this logical? This is a question which we have to ask. Instead of reducing our trade deficit, you're going to increase dependence. And then what's the use? I mean, the question which comes to my mind is this all pre-planned, pre-arranged? The economic advisor comes out. The economic advisor will not come out with something as clear as that. In his economic survey, pre-budget economic survey, and then the defense minister says, okay, I let him do what he does, but I cannot say no to what he has said. I don't find fault with what he has said. And then all these articles come out in all over, including Global Times. Okay. Now, simultaneously, the defense budget is reduced. So you're doing a deal with them for this? I mean, that's the sense I get when I pin the dots. I do hope, sincerely for our country, we go by what our external affairs minister has indicated. We could do business with China. I don't mind. But first the LSE. First the security. You cannot do a deal with them having compromised your security. Right? This is all I had to say. I'll take all your questions and then we'll discuss which way to go. I expect the economic advisors are aware that, let alone the renminbi, even the dollar are suspect and have lost their underlying currency value. Your views, I agree with you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the way I look at it, I would like to say, ये है कौन? ये दिमाग है? Economic advisor का. Look, if you want to do all this, you might like to do it privately and do things, under the carpet and maybe with logic come out. But in budget, and it gets a direct reflection in the budget in the form of a reduction in your defense expenditure. That means there's a deal on